Monday, July 13th. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geeknights. Tonight we were going to talk about full disclosure, black hat, white hat, ass hat, but kind of ramble.
Let's do this.
So I come home from work today, and there is what I can
Eight
only
people.
There is what I can only
Gaga.
describe as a bomb that has been delivered to our house. There's this shady looking,
Oh, this is not a big deal.
like ripped up, like just really crappy looking package that's half opened. It's addressed to Scott. It was mailed from Beacon a while ago, and it has no return address.
I mailed a book to somebody because I sold the book on Amazon, and somehow the book showed up on my front porch.
Yeah, so as a result, shady looking package, ripped open, no return address, mailed from Beacon.
I have to go check my Amazons after the show to see if this person returned it or what. I don't know.
It is clear that whatever mailing label you put on it fell off, and the post office got it, and they're like, well, there's only one address here. We'll mail it to Scott Rubin. And no, he put plenty of postage on it.
I put the address was clearly, it was on a piece of paper that was heavily taped to the front, so I do not know what the hell happened to it. But I will go and correct this situation, emailing the purchaser and such.
But much more importantly, I come out of work for lunch, and I'm kind of in a hurry, and it was like tourist day, like more so than any other day. I walk onto 42nd Street, and I just can't walk. There are just slow people blocking every sidewalk in every direction. It took me like 10 minutes to walk to the Chipotle.
Mm-hmm.
But on my way, inside of this crowd, there's another crowd, this long line of people lined up somewhere. It was like down the street. And I'm like, all right, what's going on here? So I walk up to the front of the line, and I see that the line terminates at that shady-looking KFC/Dunkin' Donuts on 42nd Street by Grand Central.
Uh-oh.
But then I look, and I realize that it's no longer Dunkin' Donuts. It is now a shady-looking KFC and a shady-looking Tim Hortons.
Really? So that's where it is?
That's where the Tim Hortons is. They got
That's
rid
in
of
a
the
bad place.
Well, no, it's in a great place if you get rid of that KFC.
I didn't know that Dunkin' Donuts and Tim Hortons and KFC were all the same company. Or what?
I don't think Tim Hortons is. I think the Dunkin' Donuts.
You think that the guy who just owns that storefront has bought two franchises and put them in the same place?
I think Dunkin' Donuts. They realized that Dunkin' Donuts was not making them money. I mean, that's the one where the people were complaining about their 80-cent coffee.
Well, he definitely made his money back with his switching to a Tim Hortons franchise. The thing is, don't usually franchises make you have agreements? Like, you can't have a McDonald's. If I buy a McDonald's franchise and a Burger King franchise, they don't let me put them in the same building.
It depends. Everyone's different. I mean, Subway basically
Subway doesn't give a shit about anything. Subway is the easiest franchise in the universe.
Exactly.
That's why they're everywhere.
That's also why most Subways you go into are super shady.
Yeah. Basically, if you wanted to open up, I don't know, a Cold Stone, right? They don't say yes that easily. You gotta, be pretty cool about it and, slick, or else they'll just be like, no, we're not gonna let you. But if you want to open up a Subway, all you do is say, yeah, I'm thinking about, you got one. Here you go. Open anywhere you want.
The best part is
Backyard
the owners
share.
of all those Subways are so shady's the word today, because a lot of my coworkers will just go to Subway real quick, and the people will
$5 footlong.
No, they'll cover up the $5 footlong sign and try to get away with not following the promotion that they have to follow.
Really? I've never seen that.
Or they'll just charge people full price unless they complain.
Whoa.
Yeah, I basically have given up Subway forever.
I'll go to Subway. It's on the list. I rarely eat at any sort of fast
Subway's in
food.
emergency food. There's the list of,
It's an acceptable emergency food.
It's like the bottom of that list is pretty much I'll go to Arby's, I'll go to Subway, I'll go to Taco Bell.
I won't go to Taco Bell ever.
I would go to Taco Bell before I go to McDonald's or Burger King.
I would go to McDonald's or Burger King because at least before Taco Bell, because at least while I would, those three are way at the bottom of the list, way at the bottom. But Taco Bell is still lower than McDonald's or Burger King.
Why?
Because McDonald's and Burger King, especially McDonald's, has some menu items that are, acceptable.
What does Taco Bell not have? They're like high school cafeteria tacos. They're not that bad.
They're pretty bad. At McDonald's, I can get
a
cookie,
fig burger.
a cookie.
That's not dinner.
A chemical milkshake.
That's not dinner.
Oh, a dinner?
Yeah, food. This is the situation of Silicon. We're in the middle of nowhere, and there's no food.
A dinner from McDonald's?
Yeah, or a
I
dinner
get a
from
chicken.
Taco
I can get
Bell.
a chicken sandwich at McDonald's, right?
You can.
Don't they have a crispy chicken something?
Yeah, it's not as good as the Arby's one.
Well, I mean, it's just mechanically separated chicken McNugget, whatnot.
Yeah. All right, so McDonald's or Burger King?
I take McDonald's slightly over Burger King because
I think Burger King's at the bottom for me. The only thing below Burger King is like Popeyes at a rest stop.
Well, there's like Chick-fil-A is way down there.
Well, Chick-fil-A is in a different category. I won't eat there
Roy Rogers is way down there.
Chick-fil-A, I'm against both for food reasons and for moral reasons.
White Castle is pretty much the bottom.
White Castle's awesome. White Castle's in a separate category.
White Castle's pretty much the most disgusting, worst food you could possibly eat.
I will seek out White Castle.
I know this. That's why I called it out.
Yeah?
To show how disgusting you are.
Granted, it's no hot and now.
You're gonna eat your chicken sticks, chicken rings at the White Castle?
I don't eat the chicken rings.
Oh, wait.
All right, now here's the thing. Nothing on the White Castle menu other than the standard White Castle burger. You think I'm going to eat like fried oysters that they have?
Yeah, that's what White Castle's about, isn't
No,
it?
that's not what it's about. You go there and order a sack of like 100 hamburgers.
You know what I heard? White Castle is 88 years old, and they have a special sale going on right now, 88 cents.
Yeah, they do that periodically.
Yeah. The thing is, next year it'll be 89 cents. I don't think it's going to keep up with inflation, though. So I think when they're like 100 and the burgers are $1, they'll probably be worth like $5.
See, the thing is, the way they get away with that is that people go there like, oh, yeah, cheap burger. And then they realize how awesome White Castle is.
No, it's really not awesome at all.
When was the last time you ate a White Castle burger?
When you and me went to White Castle.
You actually ate? I recall you not wanting to eat and just sitting there.
Oh, I mean, I went there, but I didn't eat.
When was the last time you ate one? You don't know what they taste like. They're awesome.
I went way back in Jersey.
Jersey.
Way back. That's where the only place that real White Castles are is Jersey.
Nah.
They don't let them anywhere else because they're so disgusting.
I just remember living in Sterling
at
Heights
least
as a kid.
Subway, they let you make a Subway anywhere because at least it's it's just food on a roll. But
As a kid in
White
Sterling
Castle,
Heights-
I mean, that's only legal in like certain places.
As a kid in Sterling Heights, White Castle, Burger King, and Taco Bell were banned from the city limits. So at every corner, like at the edge, every road that went out of the city, right there was a Burger King, a White Castle, and a Taco Bell.
KFC is also way down.
It was
the
funny. They
list.
banned Taco Bell and White Castle, I believe, for the grade of meat. They banned Burger King because they had an ordinance against smells, and apparently Burger King could not possibly conform to that ordinance.
Wow.
Yeah.
So
there's a Tim Hortons there, and I can get Timbits in the morning, I guess.
I'll just buy a donut from a cart if I really want one.
Yeah, but
I used to like pass by like maybe one cart going to work. Now I pass by like 8 carts.
See,
There's like so many.
if you're gonna get the cart donut, you gotta get the coffee stick. It's pretty much the best donut in there.
I don't know. I sort of like the regular old glaze.
But the coffee stick is the closest thing to a real donut I've seen outside
also,
of a
those
donuttery.
carts have actually pretty good bagels, and they're only 75 cents.
Yeah.
Like you go to like the hot and crusty.
It's like $1.80.
It's $1, and it's not $1.80.
It's $1.80 if you get cream cheese on it.
I don't get no cream cheese.
What kind of bagel are you eating?
It's too much money with the cream cheese.
I can't be a big spender. Not everyone has all this money laying around.
I know, right? I can do cream cheese at home where I could buy some Temptee. But the cream, and plus they don't give you the whipped cream cheese. They give you that solid cream cheese. It's no good.
I like that stuff. The problem is they put like a pound of it on my bagel.
That's also a problem.
I like scrape some off before I eat it.
I know, right? So you're paying for all that extra cream. Actually, you know what? Those really generic Metro cafes are actually a pretty good place to go to get a bagel because A, you don't really have to wait in line because no one else is getting a bagel there. B, the bagel's not too bad, and C, like they toast it and there's no line. So other places, like it's hard to get it toasted, you know?
Well, I get to the city early enough. There's never a line for anything.
Oh.
Except the goddamn Starbucks.
No.
7 a.m., there's like 10 people in line ahead
That's
of
the
me.
only place that's going to be a line up that early. All right, tech news is...
Got some tech news?
What was my tech news? Oh, yes, I don't believe we talked about this on the show earlier, but the creators of Gizmodo and who moved on to also create Engadget, which are pretty much the same thing as Gizmodo, have moved on yet again, and they opened up GDGT, which is not like Gizmodo or Engadget at all, really, other than it is, it's a gadget website.
I don't know what your opinion is, but I went from this is awesome to this is crap in about a day.
Yeah, I pretty much went from this is awesome to this is crap to this is okay, and it's got to improve a lot. Basically, the site is sort of what I hoped it would be, right? In that you have this situation where a gadget comes out. Let's say it's, I don't know, a particular model of digital camera, right? And you want to discuss this particular model of digital camera with other people who have that particular model. And that's not so easy on the internet. So, I mean, I had my previous cell phone was like a LG VX 8600, right? And I found some weird forum on the internet that was some crazy V-bulletin thing, and there was one category in that forum that had a threads for my phone. And so I had to join it, and it's like that one phone happened to have this nook and cranny on the internet. Like the TiVo used to have these TiVo forums that all these TiVo people would go to, like these AVS forums and who knows what. And it really was not a good situation for people who wanted to sort of connect in a community around gadgets, either specific or general.
Well,
and
I remember very, very, very much way back when we had that Apex or whatever DVD player.
Yep.
And I had to troll around in the forums about that device to figure out how to hack it to be region free.
Yep. And also, even talking about general tech stuff, right? I mean, Slashdot and, Dig and those sorts of places that have tech news, right? That also have, I guess, discussion, right? They don't really cover the tech news the way that Engadget and Gizmodo do. And while Engadget and Gizmodo have comments, those comments are these flat comments. There are thousands of them within like a minute, and you can't really have a discussion or connect with anyone. All you can do is post a comment that no one's ever going to see. So GDGT sort of also, they sort of bring in the RSS from Gizmodo and Engadget and other places and allow, discussions, actual discussions on the tech topics and things. So it's sort of good in this way. And also, there's a gadget database that, they sort of started it up, but you can go in and contribute, and add in new gadgets that aren't in there. And I've added a few. And, then you can also search gadgets based on specs. Like you can say, show me all the 40-inch plasmas that have at least this much refresh rate and stuff like that, which is pretty cool. The things that bother me about the site is, first of all, any entries into the database need to be approved by some people who work for them, which is pretty problematic. They should have just made it an open wiki like Wikipedia and let people go nuts.
Didn't you try to add your happy hacking keyboard and you couldn't?
I tried to add the happy hacking keyboard because I wanted to discuss it with other happy hacking keyboard people. I couldn't add it because the company that makes it was not already added in the system. So I had to add PFU Systems. They denied my entry for PFU Systems because they didn't realize that they made the happy hacking keyboard. They were like consumer electronics manufacturers only, and PFU Systems primarily makes non-consumer electronics. The happy hacking keyboard is pretty much the only consumer product they make. So I had to go in, and they have a separate, one thing they did that was smart is they have a separate forum for talking about GDGT, and I really like that. There's, Stack Overflow gets that right also. You need to separate the meta from the site itself. Putting them in together really, really hurts.
Well, how long have people wanted that for Slashdot? Some sort of place to argue about Slashdot independently of the articles on Slashdot.
Exactly, because if people talk about Slashdot on Slashdot, then people who come to Slashdot who don't care about Slashdot itself, but actually care about the content, are inundated with all this talk about mod points and shit, and they're like, oh, fuck this. Right? Like if you go to Stack Overflow, you're looking for the answer to your tech question. You're not looking to talk about this site that you never even heard of because you just came to it through Google, right? So they have a separate forum on their site for talking about GDGT, and I'm like, hey, I was denied. And they fixed it, so good for them. And then I was able to enter my keyboard, and they accepted that as well. So they're good about it, but it's still, they should have made it a wiki. All the data that people are entering should be Creative Commons wiki license, just like Wikipedia, right? Wikipedia compatible. And, they could use a little bit more cleanliness in some of the interface bits. It's sometimes hard to figure out exactly what to click on and such like that. And, it's definitely got the right idea, but the execution is not yet perfect. But I'm still sort of hopeful because the people behind it are smart. And also, they're going to iterate. They're nowhere near done, right? They got a lot of room to grow, and they've got to start. I just wonder how long they can hold on to all these people they grabbed with their sort of initial go. It's like they started up, 1 million people rush in. How many people are still there? I guarantee less than, a very small percentage of the people are still actively coming to the site all the time.
Plus, there's the problem of anything like that on the internet where you'll probably just distill everyone down to the Dig Ron Paul people.
Yep. And, well, I think another thing is that you look at a site like Engadget, right? And even though these people are not in Engadget anymore, you'll still read it once a day, maybe even twice a day, because the updating with new news. GDGT doesn't have that update thing going on. You know, it's like the front page is just the front
you
page.
only go when you need something, and once you get it,
you only
never come
go
back.
when you need something, or if you're it's not something you're going to go to all the time. So it's sort of, you have to really, the only time you're going to visit it a ton is if you're heavily invested in some gadget and the community around that gadget builds up on GDGT. However, if there is a gadget that warrants a community building up around it, I think GDGT has sort of become the default place to form that community. So that's going to help them, and I think they just need to wait for more gadgets that are community worthy to appear. And the thing is, though, I sort of feel like when a gadget is too popular, like say the iPhone, just GDGT has the iPhone section is just so crazy, it's not even really. Maybe if you want to like find a how-to for hacking it or something like that, it'd be in there. But for discussion, I think it's too intense still.
The thing is, I think the majority of people for any device don't care about the discussion. They literally just want the step-by-step fact.
Yep, and I think that GDGT, in those discussions, the facts will appear, and that will be helpful to people's. One interesting thing they did, the last thing I'll say, is that you can do reviews of gadgets, and you can either you find a gadget you can link to an existing review elsewhere on the net, like CNET, Slashdot, wherever, your blog. You can also submit your own review, but your review has to be at least some number of words. So like you can comment and discuss your brains out, but if you want to put a review up, it has to be at least so long, which implies that it's, good. So I think that was an interesting.
That it says "fuck you iPod" followed by the letter A repeated 150 times.
Yeah, I somehow think that won't make it through, but that was shows that they're thinking about that sort of thing.
Well, I mean, Slashdot always had the lameness filter.
Yeah, that's true.
Which more often than not seemed to stop legitimate posts that were trying to post code than it did to stop spammers.
Yeah, but what are you gonna do?
But I remember way back when I was in high school, and I was really that was when I was really into hacking and all that sort of stuff. And the more I learned about computers, the less I cared about that sort of thing.
I know, right?
It's funny how that works. And now that security is a big deal and I work for one of those big iron companies yet again, that sort of hacking is just no longer even useful or interesting or anything.
Well, I think what it is a lot of that hacking is, it's only pragmatic for people with more time than money.
Well,
and
there's also the situation that it's kind of like
it's only pragmatic as a entertaining hobby if you have tons of money.
Well, no, it's kind of like the freaking days, like the golden age of hacking the phone system where, a technology appears, in this case it's internet, computing, all that sort of stuff, and there'll kind of be this early Wild West phase where the technology is being suddenly widely deployed, but there are very few safeguards or controls, and nothing's really tested or proven. And that's when hackers can really do crazy, awesome stuff.
But
then it won't take long for the sophisticated companies and the people who know what they're doing to come in, patch everything, and then there's no more Wild West.
Yeah. I
Or
don't
at least there's a
think the
different
Wild
kind of
West
Wild
is
West.
going anywhere.
It's a different kind of Wild West. I mean, it used to be the Wild West of we're omnipotent gods walking through a sea of ants, and now it's the Wild West of everybody has a gun and nobody has a way to stop
That's
guns.
the real Wild West. No, but, some stuff like, say, overclocking, right, is really good for people who don't have a lot of money but have a lot of time because, they can get their, they can hack to sort of get more than they paid for. And certain stuff like, say, jailbreaking your iPhone is really great if you have a ton of money, because if you break your iPhone, you can just get another one. But for someone like us, where we have more money than time, but we don't have so much money that we can afford 2 iPhones, right? It's sort of like, well, we got enough money, we can just buy a faster CPU instead of overclocking, but I don't have so much money I can buy 2 iPhones.
See, now I'm going to take
I'm not really hacking
I'm going to take
so
a
much.
completely different tack here in that I think a big part of it is, I was talking about the golden age of hacking and all that.
Yep.
It's just like with science. I mean, back in the day, you could have a Ben Franklin who kind of dabbles in everything, and the bar of doing something cool or interesting or novel or new was so low that it didn't take a lot. You didn't need this gigantic body of prior knowledge to do some crazy things early on. It took very little to do very much. But as things got more sophisticated, I mean, the level of skill and knowledge it takes to write a modern worm or a modern effective virus is so much that by the time you learn that much, you've given up on your desire to own swords.
Yep.
I think that's the primary factor.
Of course, most people doing the worms are either A, they're making so much bank because they're the guy doing it, or you're just some script kiddie who just takes them from that guy and then uses them.
Exactly, but that's a whole script kiddieing is a whole different thing from actually hacking.
Yeah. All right.
But I remember one of the hot topics back then was Tempest and the whole EMI shielding, and that theoretically.
This is like this funny joke at RIT.
Yeah, well, everyone always went after it and tried to do it, and
well, it was this theoretical thing that worked, but it was sort of like more trouble than it was worth, right? The idea was that if someone had a CRT monitor and you had like this really fancy equipment, you could basically see their screen. Even if you weren't looking at their screen.
Well, it's basically,
if you were just close enough.
It's fundamentally the idea that you can take the extent kind of radiation, because, there's electromagnetic radiation coming out of any electronic device.
Yep.
And theoretically, that contains everything that's being processed by your computer. It's just obfuscated by the fact that there's a lot of electromagnetic radiation going around.
Yep.
But because computers are synchronous and they have buses and they have very reliable timing, it is theoretically possible to identify a particular computer in that radiation and get information from it. And, this is true. It can be done. There are lots of proof of concept. It's been done. But at that time, hackers in particular, people like me, were real into it. And as a result, I remember it was just a huge thing, and people were trying to do it all the time. There was a lot of software and hardware. Like back in the day,
what's the practical situation where that hack is actually A, gonna work, and B, there isn't a better hack that would work in the same situation that is less stupid?
I think there definitely are. It's just a matter of it was a lot more difficult to do than a lot of people thought. But the disparity between how difficult it was and how difficult people thought it was led to a really interesting situation where people were building RFI or EMI shielded computers. People were building Faraday cages around their machines.
I didn't see much of that.
There was a lot of that on the internet. There were
I think there's a lot of reports of that on the internet.
I saw a lot of pictures and designs for it. And PGP, the early versions back in the day, had a mode. It was called Tempest Secure. And what it would do is when you decrypted a document, it would show it on your screen in this very low contrast kind of shifting window that theoretically would be much more difficult to read in some sort of Tempest attack. That was built into PGP.
I don't remember that, but
I'll take
your word for it.
I used it because I was a paranoid high school hacker nerd, and Tempest was totally
I don't remember
cool.
that. I don't remember hearing about the Tempest until we were at RIT. So
was
it really around back then?
Yes, people. It was a theoretical thing. I mean, around that time, there's also the idea that you could theoretically, if you could film what was going on some really slow network equipment that had those LEDs that would light up when data was being sent, you could recreate the data that was being sent because the LEDs were triggered by the pulses on the wire.
But you need to know if the pulse is a 1 or a 0.
No, you don't.
No?
No. But and it actually did work, but what most people failed to realize was that it worked on technology that was already obsolete, and that can't work with the 10 base.
The other thing that's stupid about that, right, is okay, let's say that even if you could do it with modern networking equipment, right? Well, that assumes, right, that you can get into a situation where you're next to the networking equipment with a camera.
That's trivial. Have you ever been to a modern colo data center?
They just let you walk right in?
Well, no, you have your cage. When you have a key, you can only get into your cage. And no one can get into your cage without your permission. So in my cage, I just put a fucking camera.
That looks at your own stuff.
Looks at someone else's stuff in another cage. The cages are usually just like bars.
All right, but that's a very, narrow scenario.
It's not as narrow as you'd think because, for example, some of the data centers that I have stuff in, there's a huge important Google thing is right next to us, and one of our competitors is right next to us, all that sort of stuff. There are a lot of that's why data center security is such a big deal, because there's a lot of very important information right next to other very important information, and people on both sides want that information. Luckily, the camera trick doesn't work on any modern infrastructure whatsoever.
Yeah, now the lights just pretty much tell you it's working, it's not working.
But Tempest was a huge deal among the 2600 phone freaker hacker types because that stuff was.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to find the 20. There must be a 2600 article or articles
And
about it.
not only
we
was
have
it
to go
really cool,
find.
but in kind of that sort of thing back then, it was a lot easier to do, partly because things were slower and things were less shielded and used a lot more power. Your computer was just a gigantic antenna. I mean, look at a PS2 keyboard and how loud that is electromagnetically compared to like USB keyboard.
I think the my headphones died, but that's all right. Yeah.
All right, but anyway, the news here is that this whole thing suddenly got rediscovered by the internet, and we're going to see a lot of people losing their shit over this again because there's
Well, I
another
thought there was a new. Someone just came up with a new one that was pretty much like the same thing, only it looks at keyboards, right?
Well, there's a proof of concept at some conference where basically you can read what people are typing on PS2 keyboards and possibly other devices by having an
lasers
outlet.
or something, right?
No, by having
the electrical outlet.
by
right.
having an outlet on the same ground as someone else's outlet.
Yeah.
And there's a proof of concept, and it looks like it works. At
But
about,
what scenario do you have physical access to the same outlets as someone else?
That's pretty trivial. I'm in a skyscraper. I'm on the same floor as some other company.
Still, it's
Yeah,
and they
that's
got a lot of computers over there. How are you going to separate which ones are which?
well, that's the part of. I mean, did you even read the article? Do you know anything about this?
No,
Not at all.
it doesn't. It doesn't sound to me though like it's a plausible hack that's
Well, no,
actually
what-
useful.
What it is it's actually pretty much equally plausible to a lot of the Tempest stuff in that if you have sophisticated equipment, you could probably engage in some very sophisticated attacks. However, the real thing here is that the majority of people will never encounter this on either side, and people are going to talk about this a lot more than is warranted, probably.
I mean, if you want to hack someone, you could probably just get him with any old normal worm, and it's gonna work. It's not like this is sort of like ridiculous kind of.
Well, it's not
stuff.
ridiculous. It's just interesting, fun kind of hobby hacker stuff. I mean, if you're into ham radio, let's say, or electromagnetic design, or anything like that, this stuff is really cool. I mean,
It's cool, yes, but I'm saying is that if anyone actually takes this as a legitimate security consideration, you're going overboard.
well, it depends on what you're doing and who you think your enemies are. And there are industries where that sort of thing, you've got to take it into account.
I don't think anyone's gonna do this hack ever.
Well, the thing is, it's pretty trivial to counter these sorts of attacks. It's the same thing with PGP, where there's a theoretical attack. There are relatively innocuous ways to prevent said theoretical attack, but the people who primarily use the theoretical versions of the attack are the people who are least likely to be targeted by ultra super secret spy organizations. However, I will point out that I could probably steal your password.
I'm not worried about it.
Maybe I should try to
I
do
have
it.
a USB keyboard and LCD monitor.
I didn't actually
go
read
for
it. I think it could be done on a USB keyboard. I'm not sure.
It doesn't matter.
I think it's neat stuff, though. I mean, you're
I also have a UPS.
that barely works and probably is just going to pass through
No,
anyway.
I bought the newer one, remember?
Oh, yeah, you did.
I have the fancy one. So what are you gonna do?
Just put a keylogger on your USB in line.
You know what? This actually, I'm pretty sure UPS would just completely, right? Wouldn't it?
No, because remember, UPSs are usually passed through and it's the same ground. Your UPS doesn't have some magic special ground anywhere. It's not the good UPS like James would tell us about. It's the crappy UPS.
Oh, whatever. Let's just continue.
Plus, I mean, ground loops have been used to transfer information in the past. That's why if you plug audio
See,
equipment...
that's something I'd be more interested in, right? Instead of like snooping on people and using this for evil, use this as some sort of way to surreptitiously communicate. That would be cool.
That already works. It's trivial to do. You can buy devices that you plug into all the outlets in your house and have a poor man's 10-base network.
Actually, I was reading that was it the Philippines that they were going to do internet over power lines, like for ISP over power
yeah,
lines.
Scott, they've been talking about that for 20 years. It never happens anywhere.
It sounds like someone's actually going to do it.
I will not believe it until it is actually deployed.
I
because
also agree with you, but
there's been
I'm
a
just
story
saying,
every 6 months for almost the entirety of the time that I have owned a computer saying internet over the high voltage power lines is coming tomorrow.
Well, I heard in the Philippines. That's all I'm saying.
I heard in the Philippines.
That's right.
But I think everyone should read this article because really this stuff is pretty cool and you can do cool stuff. And if you're a hobbyist hacker, try to do this sort of thing. It's not that hard. And from what I gather from this article, But for under $1,000, you can put together something that will be able to replicate this proof of concept.
Yeah, if I had $1,000, I'd just buy a nice HD TV or something. Maybe another Mac Mini that was newer and better.
Yeah, well, if you want to just consume as opposed to create interesting and useless hacks.
Also, pay a month of rent. It'd be good too.
I think you're getting old. You've lost the hacker spirit.
I'm hacking the softwares where, shit's easy.
Oh, have you? What have you written recently?
A lot of work.
At work. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're old. But anyway, things of the day. So what do you have for me, Scott?
So this is video here of these kids, and they got a pool, and they must be rich because it's a fancy pool in a fancy-looking house in a fancy-looking neighborhood, all right? And all they do is they video themselves dunking, doing slam dunks on the pool basketball hoop, right? So that's, okay. The thing is, A, they're real good at it, and B, they come up with some really creative multiple-person dunks on this little pool basketball hoop. And they pulled them off. I'm pretty sure they tried a bunch of times and only actually edited the ones that they succeeded into the video. But they look like they're having a lot of fun. And this was totally the kind of shit we did when I was a kid all the time. And so when I watched it, I was like, my childhoods, they have it.
Well,
it's not fair.
There's definitely something about the and it's just like that game. I think we made it a thing of the day a long time ago, where those people covered the table in soap and would spin the frisbee on the soap. There's something about taking an arbitrary activity. Someone does something once, and then you have a bunch of friends together, and you decide to become the best people in the world at this thing you just made up, and that's an entire afternoon.
No, but it's like, just sitting around, just thinking of shit to do and coming up with something sort of funky like that. I mean, that was, when I would go to like the town pool. And that's the other thing is that, a lot of the stuff I did when I was a kid was pool related. I had a pool in the backyard, went to the town pool, pretty much any summer camp, there was always pools going. It was just a lot of pools all over the place, especially
I had the
in
same
the summer.
thing except without the summer camp or the town pool. Everyone just had pools.
Yeah, no, but there was a lot of,
We'd pick whose house we go to, and we'd all hang out in their pool.
But yeah, for as long as for my whole life, every summer up until when I went to RIT, there was a lot of pool action. So, this was really close to home, and it's totally epic, and I wish I'm going to get a pool so we can go back to those days.
I definitely think it comes out of the same impulse that created the Frisbee game. It's just you take something and just, you have nothing to do in the afternoon, you turn it into your entire afternoon. Something dumb. Like
the thing is, they're totally
argument.
enjoying it too. Like,
well, what? Like you're going to
do
do something like that and not enjoy it?
Well, no, but like you can tell that they're rocking out.
Yeah, those Frisbee people were rocking out.
All right. It's good times.
Flash mobs come and go, and they're good ones and bad ones, but after the whole Michael Jackson thing, there were a lot of Michael Jackson flash mobs, and they were mostly pretty mediocre.
Well, at least, none of them really stood out.
Well, no, they were mostly pretty mediocre, especially the one that tried to happen in New York, but didn't seem like
I think it might have been the next day, but I never saw a video of it, so it's like,
if there was no video, it clearly fizzled out. But here, I have learned that in Stockholm, that is where people know how to put together a goddamn flash mob.
Well, actually, those MC Hammer ones are pretty good, but they were commercially orchestrated.
Yes, they were. That's why I didn't mention them.
Yeah.
But this one does not appear to be commercially orchestrated and appears to be some of the more epic of the flash mobs I've ever seen, because the degree to which the tiny one-person dancing grows into hundreds of people without you even realizing it, and the fact that just they melt out of the crowd, like, it's beautiful.
They got skills, definitely. They practiced.
It is a thing to behold, and anyone who wants to do a flash mob, you could learn from these people.
My guess is that they must have scheduled and an attempted one out in a field where no one could see and practiced it and then brought it somewhere else. Because that's what I would do if I was doing a flash mob that had to be so coordinated or something. I would, if it was a dance or something along those lines, I would send out a video teaching people to dance, right? Everyone would watch it on YouTube and learn it on their own. Then I would schedule a drill. Be like, okay, we're going to do one for fake out in this field, right, at 1 p.m. on Saturday. And we do it in the field until we got it right. And then I'd be like, okay. And then I would send out the next message would be, okay, everyone, for reals at the train station tomorrow. And then there you go. That's how to make it awesome like they got.
Well, yeah, much like an anime cosplay. You practice, you choreography it, and you know.
But I think that I have a hard time believing that this was actually 100% spontaneous. Like this, they just said, "All right, everyone at the train station," and then pulled it off that awesomely without,
Well,
like,
a flash mob
prior preparations.
does not necessarily, I wouldn't say, necessitate a spontaneous, hey, we're going to do this here, and everyone just shows up. They can also be extremely well coordinated because the flash mob is either it is formed.
But I just think that if you prepare that much in advance, it removes some of the flash aspect.
But
of
how
the mob.
it's a flash in that you have a normal crowd of people doing normal things, and suddenly a mob appears out of nowhere. It flashes.
Yeah, it's true, but
But what?
it's all right. It's it's not as flash as
Well, no,
the
it's
mob
just-
was not. Was pretty much just like, let's do it.
Because
it was like, all right, practice.
most of what people call a flash mob is usually a well coordinated, set up event that then appears somewhere later.
Yeah,
That's what almost all of them are. So
it is. I just I think it's a lot more impressive though if the mob is truly 100% flash.
So yes, it's a lot more impressive if people do something with less practice and with less preparation.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so what are we talking about tonight? We've gone on a long time on this show. So
That's good. We probably need to because I don't know how much direction we have for the main bit. Anyway, so what? We decided downstairs that we were going to talk about black hat versus white hat.
I just wanted to talk about full
versus-
disclosure because I'm pretty sure we've already talked about all the hats a long time ago on Geek Nights.
I don't think we ever talked about the hats on Geek Nights, and I don't know how much there is to say about full disclosure.
As an IT professional, there's a lot to say about it, but if it's just going to be me talking, we can just skip it for now.
Well, we could start by talking about the full disclosure and then branch off to other hatteries if necessary.
Well, the reason I thought about it, and the reason I really wanted to talk about it, at least just full disclosure, was the whole Image Shack thing that happened not too long ago, where basically a vigilante group hacked Image Shack and replaced all the images with their kind of poorly put together manifesto. And their whole idea, their whole thing is that there should not be full disclosure, and that full disclosure is just a ploy by the security people to scare people into buying their firewalls and their antivirus and that sort of thing.
That's what they hacked Image Shack for?
Yes, it's basically their manifesto is crap. I'm not even going to read it, but they clearly do not work in the IT industry in any real capacity. But at the same time, they pulled off a pretty clever hack and owned Image Shack pretty thoroughly.
Yeah.
But as a professional, I'm kind of 50-50 on full disclosure because really what it comes down to is that full disclosure will cause lots of problems. It's basically the equivalent of if you can't fix your government by voting, burning down a building to fix it.
Yeah, it's like, okay, in theory, it's a theory versus pragmatism situation, right? In theory, right, if there's a security hole, it's probably better that people know, right? Because then they know how to protect themselves from it, right? B, it puts pressure on someone to fix it. C, the fix will come sooner, et cetera, right? The thing is, right, is that in reality, if you look at the actual numbers, it's that if a vulnerability is not published, it pretty much never gets exploited. All these Windows worms and exploits, like 99.99999% of all exploits in Windows and Internet Explorer are against things that Microsoft has already put out a patch for. And Microsoft, when the patch comes out, they'll tell you what the patch was for. You can go look
Scott,
these things up.
But you're forgetting that a lot of these kind of full disclosure situations aren't Windows or anything like that. They're things that are much more vulnerable and much more important, like routers or ATMs.
Oh yes, of course. But it's the same situation with those. If you don't disclose the vulnerability, it's hardly ever gets exploited.
Well, no, because the thing is, they actually, as far as there's a lot of evidence to suggest that these sorts of things do get exploited quite a bit, but they're exploited quietly by people who use them to very great effect. And even if the companies find out about it, they're probably better off covering it up than letting loose that they have this vulnerability.
It's a different situation. Like if you're a bank and you get hacked, you don't want to let anyone know you got hacked because then you look real bad and everyone takes their money out.
But the reason that these people are stupid, in my opinion, is one, their rationale. They're no better than we invaded Iraq for the oil people who just know nothing about the issue and just kind of make up some half-baked conspiracy theory that doesn't actually make sense.
Mm-hmm.
Whoever hacked Image Shack is stupid. But
no doubt about that.
But the issue with full disclosure is I feel like in the end, I am for it for the simple fact that almost any time someone who is a white hat, someone who is good and smart and knowledgeable, discovers a vulnerability, they will inform the company that has the product privately and say, look, I found this vulnerability, you should fix it. It's a huge vulnerability. If someone in the wild finds out about it, they could compromise all your customers, this sort of thing. And the vast majority of companies that receive notices like this either ignore them or sue the person who contacted them for hacking.
That's happened a lot.
So it is in the best interest of a person who discovers something like this to not contact the company, because the company is very likely not going to respond with any sort of goodwill whatsoever, and you're only putting yourself in danger by trying to help them.
Well, it depends on the company. It depends how you contact them. But it depends on a lot of things.
But the problem here is that even if you can't be sure, and the company, because of the way the laws are, have a lot of leverage in coming after you. So really,
well, you can look at the history of, especially if it's a tech company, they probably have a history of people telling them about vulnerabilities, and they have policies and official ways to let them know.
But usually,
Adobe's had a lot of exploits, that people have told them about, and there's a way to do it that makes Adobe happy.
But Scott, even then,
there's a way to do it that makes them angry.
But even then, if you tell them, usually they're not going to do anything, even if they don't sue you or go after you in some way.
Well, they do something usually. They're just not as fast to say open source people who fix it in 10 minutes.
I would say that usually it's been my experience that they don't do anything, that most people will just not respond, and that unless you threaten them with full disclosure, they will never fix the vulnerability. Unless
I think that from what I've seen, they do fix it. They're just slow.
No, Scott,
Microsoft will take like a couple months.
When you say slow, this will be a situation where like a hack for an ATM is discovered, where you can just like rob someone else's account of all its money.
Yeah.
And it'll be years with no fix or no indication of a fix or anything.
Yeah, it takes a long time because the people are so slow.
Yes, but that is a serious problem, because if you threaten full disclosure, usually these companies fix it almost immediately.
Well, that's just the way you do business.
Plus, the other problem, you realize if you privately contact a company and say, all right, here's what I have found, here's the vulnerability, please fix it, and someone else finds the vulnerability before they fix it, and it gets out in the wild, that company might just go after you because maybe they'll assume you're the one who released it secretly to the wild.
Yeah. But, if you're talking about an ATM company, though, that's not really a technologically savvy company. I said it depends a lot on the company that's involved. Microsoft, Adobe, these types of people, Apple, they're a lot, savvier and a lot smarter when it comes to this kind of situation. They're used to it. Random bank number 3, deballed government contractor, a lot less savvy, a lot less understanding.
But at the same time, Scott, those are the people that have more power over me. I don't even want to do business with these people, but just because of our society, I'm forced to, and they have a lot of my information.
That is true.
And if there is a vulnerability that they have that they won't fix, they're basically making me vulnerable without my consent.
That's
and as an
true.
IT professional, I feel like in the end, full disclosure is justified because it is information. It's real information. You can't hide information. You should not be obligated to hide information that you know about.
Oh, yeah. No, I agree with all that.
Unless you have signed a contract, independently of that, obviously. I mean, if I signed an NDA, I shouldn't be able to say anything.
Yeah.
So if you get in the situation where, I go to an ATM conference, I sign an NDA, and they basically show me, here's how to hack our ATMs, check it out. I can't really do anything. Of course, then there's the moral conundrum of maybe I should anonymously, but that's gray hat territory.
How about this situation, right? Exactly what you just said. The ATM is hackable, right? If you reveal the hack, full disclosure, someone's going to exploit it, bad for the company, right? Possibly bad for you. Also, if you disclose it, because the company might come after you, right? Okay, if you keep your mouth shut, well, this vulnerability stays there, never gets fixed. Maybe someday someone else discovers it, and now you're fucked and the bank is fucked again, right? So how is it ethical, perhaps, to use the exploit to hack into the device and fix the vulnerability yourself? How do you feel about that?
Well, the problem with that is that the people, white hat hackers who decide to do something like that, if they're sophisticated enough to do it well, understand that they're putting themselves at great personal risk for pretty much zero reward.
Yep.
And very few people are willing to...
Well, if the reward is you're making yourself a little bit safer. If you are really worried about the fact that someone else is making you vulnerable, you're making yourself sort of less vulnerable if you get away with the
Nah, because the problem
part.
is, because you're doing this without the consent or knowledge of the person who manages the system, even if you're a super awesome professional, Ghost in the Shell style, there's a good chance you're going to cause further problems and you're going to make things worse and not better. And it's
That's
just
also true because even if you manage to fix the one hack, it's like you don't really know their system inside and out, probably, especially if it's a closed source system. And, your change is not really going to go through the whole testing procedure and the QA and all that sort of big stuff to make sure that it doesn't affect anything else in the system.
Here's a much more interesting situation. One of the biggest problems with security in the world is that a lot of people's home Windows computers are secretly parts of gigantic spam, spyware, zombie networks.
Yep.
And the people who own these computers...
That's pretty much the number one security concern there is. If we got rid of that, security would be like a joke.
But the problem is the people who own these computers are effectively illiterate when it comes to technology, and they cannot in any way protect themselves. They refuse to learn. There's nothing we can do. We can't even consider the idea of teaching them. It just won't happen.
Mm-hmm.
And what if, a gray hat hacker made a malicious virus as opposed to a virus that just makes money for some Russian spyware company?
I actually did read recently that there was some sort of virus out there.
There is. It's the Independence Day one. It's basically counting down to a point where supposedly it will wipe out the hard drive of every device it is infected with.
Yeah, someone took this virus into their, security lab, and they basically talked to it and told it, that, they looked at the code, obviously.
Well, Scott, it's funny because we just watched Independence Day, and this is the Independence Day virus. What's it doing? Right? It's a self-repeating cycle that counts down to zero, and then it explodes.
They intentionally, made the virus think that it was, triggered, and then it erased the hard drive of the computer it was on.
Well, it erased every attached storage device.
Yep.
But here's the thing that's interesting. The speculation is that, one, it is a rival Russian, Chinese spyware spam syndicate wiping out all the hosts that are probably infected with it, the other syndicate stuff, so that they can then reattack these people and put on their own stuff and then block their competitors out.
Could be.
There's another theory that it's just some sort of, probably the first straight up malicious attack, like maybe North Korea or someone is just trying to wipe out Western infrastructure.
It's just, it's so interesting.
But
that,
third suggestion, the third theory out there is that it's some misguided white hat hacker thinking, if I do this, I will lower the amount of spam in the world by like 40% for about a day.
It's not such a... Someone who's actually a white hat hacker wouldn't go that route. They would go some other route.
No, because remember, white hat, people who are white hat, I'm talking more gray hat, like someone who's a script kiddie kind of person, someone in high school who's super hackery.
A much better idea would be
I'm not saying good idea. I'm saying there are people, there's always the debate on
I don't think that's likely.
I think it's plausible and likely. It just hasn't happened yet. That someone with the ability to write a worm might make a malicious one solely for the purpose of destroying dangerous PCs.
I don't think they would destroy dangerous PCs by erasing all attached storage devices. I think that they would perhaps maybe disable all the network devices, somehow.
But
right?
Scott, why not? Because I'm surprised it hasn't happened yet. I really am, because it would be pretty trivial to do.
I'm surprised it hasn't happened yet for just pure maliciousness, right? I mean, it's just as trivial to turn someone's computer into a, spam and spyware, who knows what, as it is to just, completely fuck the person over and make skulls show up on their screen and who knows what else crazy shit you want to do.
But at the same time, here's an idea. What if, this is not me advocating this, but you could make rampant vulnerability exploits that went around the internet and basically just attacked compromised computers and destroyed them to, one, punish the people who have poorly put out stuff, and two, make it almost impossible to maintain a compromised server for any amount of time in the wild. Because if you're compromised, these roaming viruses will just destroy you.
Well, the reason that would not work is because if the computers are destroyed, then which computer is propagating the virus if it just got erased? You need to keep the computer up to propagate the virus.
Well, no, basically you set them up to propagate with a timer payload, and then there are periodic kind of days of reckoning where, say, 40% of the devices...
Yeah, your virus will move across in sort of a wave, but then it will dissipate. Well, it won't spawn into this big, giant mold.
No, you didn't listen to what I said. It's pretty straightforward. You have semi-random days of reckoning to where the viruses go out, they propagate, but they have kind of semi-randomized timers such that they will, 30% of the network will be wiped out on this day. And then a year later, the morphed virus wipes out another 30%. So there's this constant kind of rolling blackout. The problem with this is that it would be a very sophisticated attack.
That's
and
incredibly sophisticated.
Anyone who has the ability to make something so sophisticated would probably shy at the obvious moral implications of, possibly shutting down hospital networks and that sort of thing.
Yeah, it also seems like people want credit card numbers more than they want erased hard drives.
Well, the other situation
what I would do is I would make one where as soon as it got your credit card number, then it would erase your hard drive. Because, I got nothing more I need from you.
I will say this, though. I have a small hope that regardless of why this virus came to be, if the payload does what we think it does, and there is this sort of mass wipeout of every compromised computer, I think that is going to do more for computer security than anything in the last 10 years has.
Yeah, a little bit. It would help because at least some of those people would get computers that were...
This is just a Watchmen situation.
Yeah, it would help a little bit though, but I think a better way to go about it would, there are instances in history of not even that long ago, people hacking and then popping up a message that is like you have been hacked, blah blah blah. But
we did that. I remember we were visiting Pete in Albany. We wardrove. We found a wireless access point to email Pete, and then we saw that all the guys' Windows shares were just open, read write admin. So we put a couple of text files in obvious places that explained how to turn off those shares and secure his wireless access point.
Yeah, the thing is, right, is that, let's say I make a website and the website says, your computer is vulnerable. Click here to be secure. And of course, that is an insecure thing. So we can't teaching people to trust that message is a very bad way to go. They're already don't know what to trust.
Well, that's why I feel like this is going to be a big deal if it happens. Because if we it's been a long time since there's been a widespread, actually malicious and damaging virus of any kind. If it happens, you're going to have a lot of people whose computers get wiped out who take serious damage. They're going to lose family photos and music collections and all this important stuff. And they're not going to be able to get online right away. And they're going to flood the Geek Squad and all these things. And
no, they're not. They're going to take their computer back to the Best Buy. They're going to say, it stopped working. Give me a new one. They can get a new one. They go home. It's going to get virused again.
But at the same time, if enough of them happen at once, there's going to be enough outrage to where a lot of people, there's going to be, I think, mainstream media talking about how could this happen?
Yeah, and what's going to happen is all the Nortons and stuff are going to make a lot of money.
You know what? While Nortons and those things, I think, are just a bad idea all around. For someone who's basically technologically illiterate.
And then people are not going to use the Nortons properly, and it's not going to help at all.
It'll help a little.
It's not going to help at all. People have the Nortons now, and they still get virus stuff.
Because they don't actually have the Nortons anymore.
Yeah, they do. They have it, and they still get virus because they don't update it, and they don't use it, and they turn it off, or it doesn't work right.
The thing is, it hits...
They click on shit anyway, and the Norton doesn't stop them.
The real problem is that viruses and worms are dandy, but I'd say 95% of the compromised computers out there are compromised by Trojans alone.
Yeah, Trojans are probably the biggie.
And the Trojans are the easiest things to not get owned by. Don't double click on .exes that come in random emails.
Yep.
Good God.
Look at my cousins, right? Their computer was all messed up, right? And I was like, wow, this computer's way messed up. And I found out pretty much the only reason it was messed up is so they just never do updates. It was like, when it says update it, you're supposed to say yes. They're like, oh, I just ignore that. And someone else I talked to a week later was like, oh, the updates, yeah, I just ignore those. It's the primary problem is that people do not read, they do not read whatever is written on their computer screen. They just don't. All they want to do is if there's a window that pops up, they want it to go away as quickly as possible. Okay, cancel, whatever makes it go away. They don't read anything. So if people don't read what's on their screen, nothing can make them secure. Absolutely nothing.
I mean, when I worked at the hospital, it was amazing that I could get a call from a doctor, someone who operates on people for a living, and he would say something like, my email is not working and this is a critical problem and you have to fix it right now. And I'm like, so what error did you get? He's like, there wasn't any error, it's just not working. So I tell him to try again. And I'm like, so what happened? He's like, a thing popped up. And I clicked OK. So I'm like, okay, what did the thing say? And he's like, what do you mean, what did it say? And I was like, do it again and don't click OK. So he's like, all right. And I'm like, what does it say in the box that you keep clicking on? And it's like, it basically said your email account is not set up. And he's like, what does that mean? And I was like, it means your email account is not set up.
This means exactly what it says. It's in English, right? It's not, I mean, it doesn't say like, I mean, I can understand if the error is like one of those, like in the olden days of the blue screen in Windows, where it'd be like, blah, 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 error, OXX53 poo-poo, right? But nowadays, it's like, sorry, you have a blah, blah, blah. Make sure you do this. It's in English nowadays. On Windows, Mac, and Linux, all the errors that a user will see operating in the GUI, 99% of those errors are in English. And they will tell you what to do. And if you don't read them, fuck you. You deserve what you get.
All right, I think we're done, but
I don't even know what to call this episode.
I don't know either, but
it's all you.
I feel like we could do some shows on some related topics about computer security, and I think our listeners would love some high-level... I think we should talk about ethical hacking.
I think there's more to talk about in the ethics department than, the security department.
All right, here, the next Monday show will be ethical hacking. And this one will be something else.
It's going to overlap a lot with this one.
Nah, because I want to talk about the technology side of it.
All right.
Ethical hacking means something very specific in IT.
Yeah. Well, the job of it, is that what you talk about?
Yes.
Ah.
This has been Geeknights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music.
Be sure to visit our website at www.frontrowcrew.com, where you'll find show notes, links, our awesome forum, a link to our Frapper map, and links to all the RSS feeds.
We say feeds plural because Geeknights airs 4 nights a week, covering 4 different brands of geekery. Mondays are science and technology. Tuesdays, we have video games, board games, and RPGs. Wednesdays are anime, manga, comic nights. And Thursdays are the catch-alls for various rants and tomfoolery.
You can send us feedback by email to geeknights@frontrowcrew.com. Or you can send audio feedback via Audio. Just click the link that says Send Me an Audio on the right side of our website.
If you like what you hear, you can catch the last 100 episodes in iTunes or in your favorite podcatcher. For the complete archives, visit the website, which has everything.
Geeknights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike 2.5 license. This means you can do whatever you want with it as long as you give us credit, don't make money, and share it in kind. Geeknights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.